Thank you.
Oh, yes. How are you? Great to see you. Susie. Nice to meet you.
Thanks so much. Well, please.
We did.
I'm rushing up to the dairy farm.
You only go one or two things a year, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So it's been a really good day.
Right.
At the dairy farm, they have not only robotic milking, but they have robotic feeding as well, which is crazy. I mean,
we did have a few things we want to mention.
Yes.
But I wanted to first let you have, there's a lot going on elsewhere outside of Iowa and everything else. I know that you were in supporting the combat mission in Iraq, when you were there, and obviously this has been a crazy, I guess, week this last week. I know you probably have some thoughts on that. I didn't know if you wanted to share that.
Yeah, I do, and thank you. This is great because I want to hear what's going on in the industry. We've had a couple things going on legislative-wise. The infrastructure bill has been voted on in the Senate. I did not support. There was just a lot in there that I didn't necessarily agree with, but bottom line, it came down to the fact that we fell $250 billion short on being able to pay for it, and we've got to figure this out, folks. We got to figure out how to pay for things. So I did not support. I did author a bit of the base bill, though, so I did work on that through Environment and Public Works. But beyond that, that was kind of the heavy lift over the last several weeks. But then with what's going on in Afghanistan right now, and of course I retired out of the Iowa National Guard, and many of our members have supported both the mission in Iraq as well as Afghanistan. And what we see happening right now, I mean, my phone is blowing up constantly with both folks in Iowa, service members I've known outside of Iowa that are desperately trying to get their interpreters out of Afghanistan right now. And you know how that is.
Well, you were supporting that. Was it direct legislation that you'd authored?
So it was my legislation, the special immigrant visa legislation that I worked at with Jean Shaheen, a Democrat out of New Hampshire. She and I were the primary authors of the bill, working with State Department and the administration. And Jean has been very critical of the administration as well, because we were meeting with them months ago about getting our Americans out, getting our Afghan friends out, and the State Department was very slow to react. And now we're in a situation where, one, they can't even guarantee that they're going to get Americans out, and two, never mind the Afghans. So it's tough. We're going to keep working with them. We keep pushing the administration, and I guess yesterday Biden did finally say that he would allow troops to stay after the end of the month, which before he was firm, he wasn't going to budge. But I think he's getting so much blowback because there are a lot of Americans that can't make it to the airport. And the federal government is saying we can't guarantee you safe passage.
You may have mentioned about the veterans who had gone over there, but mainly focus a lot of it on getting those interpreters that the Afghanis that they've worked with, who may be targeted by the Taliban, getting them over here on the SIVs. What do you think about the veterans themselves? How do you feel that they're working? And you were in Iraq more than Afghanistan.
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
But what do you feel about your fellow veterans who were in Afghanistan?
You bet. So I did serve in Kuwait and Iraq in Operation Iraqi Freedom, but we have many Iowa National Guardsmen, reservists, and active duty members from Iowa that served in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, I think this episode is really making many of them wonder, was my service worth it? And what I am trying to emphasize every time I do an interview is that absolutely your service and sacrifice is recognized and it is appreciated, because those men and women have kept our country safe for the past 2 decades. You know, we took the fight to the terrorists overseas. That meant keeping our homeland safe. So absolutely, we appreciate them, but I know many of them are struggling right now as they see those images on the television. And we want them to know I am going to do everything possible I can to help those interpreters get out of the country safely, whether it's to a third country or into the United States if they're properly vetted, but then also making sure our Americans that are still in Afghanistan are being evacuated. There's an estimated 15,000 Americans that are still in Afghanistan. Many of them will be those that work with Catholic charities or other types of non-governmental organizations. We don't have a good number out there because the federal government, you're not required to report to the federal government where you are, you know, whether you're in Afghanistan or not. So it's kind of unknown, and it's really left up to some of these organizations to reach out and say, hey, we have 5 Americans serving in this village in Afghanistan. We need to get them out. Unfortunately, the State Department is just not processing as quick. And we all, as members of Congress, we do have the opportunity to submit names directly to the State Department, but the number of people that they have working is so limited. And you know, I just got another request on the way over here from a Special Forces friend that's been long retired now, but his interpreter is outside of the airport boundary, but the Taliban won't let him in. So he's there with his wife and children. Can't get in, so that's where we are right now. And I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer. I've just been really critical of everything that's going on right now. I really think it was preventable. With proper planning, we could have evacuated a lot of folks out before withdrawing our troops, and it just wasn't done. So it's things that are, you know, kind of on your plate, whether it's supply logistics, employment. I mean, you tell me some of those pressing issues for you.
My biggest concern is workforce.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, it doesn't look promising.
Yeah, just in the few minutes that we spoke, you know, a lot of the same pressures as far as, you know, the next generation of service employees, parts people, you know, delivery drivers, those positions that are critical to making these operations function, you know, for our customers. It's just getting, the age gap is getting greater and greater. We're seeing guys retire, guys that physically aren't able to do the job, just bodies broke down, can't do it, you know, so it's getting challenging, and the machines are harder to work on, you know, a lot of technology in there
Yeah, definitely.
that takes a smart individual to diagnose issues and make them operate at peak performance.
No doubt.
We have, based upon my estimates, just on the service technician side of things right now. And I'm sure every one of your locations, you could probably at least hire or absorb 2 service techs per location. I don't know about the same thing at P&K, maybe even more. But
every location is searching, you know, searching. We've got a job co-op student that's going to be starting at our John here, the Kalmar here. He starts this fall, you know, but it still takes a amount of time before that person can be trained enough, experienced enough to be, you know, a productive technician or have the skill set needed to serve at a high level. So we're seeing that gap. It's continuing to grow. feel like it's continuing, it's going to continue to get better.
I think a lot of that goes back to basic education too. And the stone producer that we went to earlier today, he's about 25 people short in his operation. And he needs people that can operate heavy equipment. He needs folks. He said, first thing, he's like, I wish I could find someone that can read a tape measure. I have heard that so many times. Basic skills. Oh my God, how many of us farm kids? I mean, you knew that before you went to kindergarten, you know, and they're not really teaching those skills in school, and things that we used to take for granted, you just had to know. They don't teach in school the way maybe we learn. So yeah, it's I don't know what the answer is there.
Sells up in high schools because we're educating those high school kids to go to a 4-year college, not a tech school, to become technicians, to become a electrician or a journeyman plumber, or, you know, and I mean that's just the way we're teaching them. And so I know they need their basic skills, but they're college prepping, and not. So we need to look at prepping them for these jobs because there's good a job as there is out there.
There's fantastic opportunities. You know, I've got a daughter that graduated high school and is going off to college, and you know, following her education. Yeah, I mean, it's always talk 4-year school, 4-year school, 4-year school is ingrained in them. You know, but 4-year school is not for everybody. Right? I mean, there are certain individuals that's going to be their best fit, and they'll be very successful.
We have the junior class. We have the junior class from National Plainfield come out to our place every year to learn about farming. And for number one, they're amazed that we have like 12 computers in our office and that we know how to use them. And they are amazed at the technology that we need. And we're saying, go to school, get trained in tech, and come back here. But that's not the general education that we're giving those kids. There wasn't 4 kids in that class that identified as farmer. This is National Plainfield. I mean, as rural as it gets, that identified that they had any interest in that type of stuff, but they didn't know it. They were amazed. In our little bitty town, 5 miles from our house, I knew every kid in the class. They didn't know that.
Wow.
We're missing a really big gap.
So what do you feel about what you learned today from these people?
Well, it was good. One, just from a small business perspective, but also equipment dealership and understanding supply issues, labor issues, and just general what's going on across Iowa. It was just good to gather some information.
Now, do you feel that maybe this was discussed? But do you think that the coronavirus may have exacerbated things as you may have asked?
Yes, and I think so. And while we can't pin it all on COVID-19, certainly the pandemic created a situation that was very difficult for our small businesses. But labor shortages, trying to get people back to work and get them engaged in the workplace again has been really difficult. And I hear that from a lot of employers across the state.
This desk job, and I can just pay someone to fix my car, and I can pay them to do this and that. But those trade sets aren't going to be there because everybody's going to be looking for that air conditioned job.
Yeah.
You know, where they can, you know, have management, they can have what that 4-year degree is. So, you know, going back to the tape measure thing, you know, why do I need to be able to read a tape measure? Because I'm not going to be the one using it when I need this plumbing job done or this piece of furniture built. You know, I'll just put out the money for it.
Shop, or they want these certain things, and they want, you know, 3-day work weeks, or they want, you know, and in our industry, in our industry, we can't do that. I mean, I could have guys busy 65 hours a week if I had them willing at this point. So that's what we're running into. I speak for some of us.
So Misty, was it like that pre-COVID, or is it exacerbated now because of COVID?
I don't remember it being like that before COVID. I don't know how it relates to the COVID, but
well, I think maybe our people are bitter because we worked through it, the entire thing.
We never stopped. We never
Essential
stopped.
workers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had harvest, we had spring, and we did this. We were very fortunate our stores to be able to serve our customers and take care of them. But it's, as a manager, you know, and I know what I used to work, I was service manager for 10 years before I moved up, but you just can't find people who are willing to do that. You know, and I'm not saying that it's wrong to want that family time or that free time, but it just puts us in a bind when we're trying to take care of our growers.
And
And
it's difficult to provide a balance, you know,
Yes.
when this business, you know, when our customers need us, that's when we have to rise to the occasion, that's when we do what we do. I mean, when they're in the field and they're working, we have to be there to support them, and that's not an 8 to 5 deal.
But then also, how do we get that work culture back for some of these folks? What do we need to do?
I don't think you want to hear my answer.
I was gonna say, who wants
I
to
would
hear?
love to hear your answer, Will.
So, probably 20 years ago, Art Shotwell, who was a writer for the Des Moines Register, served in World War II, and you know, Gulf War veteran. I never believed in the conscripted military. I think unless necessity calls for it. But honestly, I've gotten to a point now where I think some kind of national service for people upon graduating or completing age 18 to 20, something that would make them feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, something that would teach them some things that they might have not learned at home. Because there's a lot of kids that aren't learning to work at home.
You only know what you know.
Right. And I it's not going to fix every problem or every woe we have, but I'll look at other places around the world, especially like Israel, and what they do with their military force. It's not just they train people to, they have a different military necessity, different mission. And I'm not saying that we need to use the military, but some kind of national program of some type that does that. I know that it's more big government, big spending, whatever, but again, I see so many kids that have no purpose when they leave high school, and they don't know they don't feel like they're a part of their community, their state, their country. I constantly am seeing people that they're getting to be 30 years old before they even moved out of the parents' house. You know, they're not, and parents aren't raising children to be adults. They're just raising children to keep them as children. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think there's something there. I just don't know what it is. But I will tell you that, again, going back to this work ethic issue, if we could teach that at some point, that'd be great. But I think Iowa's probably better than a lot of other places, or the Midwest is probably better than a lot of other places.
Do it. But if you're not willing to work and support yourself, then there should be consequences of that, and that should be hardship. And until they find out what hardship is like, they're never going to work.
Okay.
So we have, to me, I'm the opposite way. I think we got to cut programs. I think we got to cut programs. I'm not against the military thing.
No.
But I think we got to cut programs, save our spending, cut some of these free will things so that there's consequences.
Well,
If there's no consequences,
I actually
gonna do it.
think that's probably right. And what we saw during COVID, there was some necessity for
Absolutely.
providing unemployment because there
You
were
take
certain
people's
jobs that you couldn't do. But what happened is the federal government came in and said, we're not just going to give you, you know, the state's not just going to give you unemployment. We're going to give you additional unemployment each week, which means you're making more now for staying home. And most people didn't have the childcare expenses because their children were at home with them. I mean, they were living really well. And so, on one hand, we can't fault necessarily the people that are doing this because they're saying,
Absolutely.
I'm actually doing better for my family by staying home. I'm making more money by staying home. We've put them in a really bad position as a federal government, not me, because you know, we want to.
You have them down at the farm.
They would be working, but you know there is truth in that, and then you know through the years the welfare programs have made people comfortable in poverty.
I talked to a lady in Walmart the other day, and they'd gone putting her all self-checkout. And I said,
Yes.
you know, do I get a paycheck for self-checking, you know? And she said, well, we just, we got one checker. And she says, and I said, I imagine you're really busy. She says, ever since COVID and the paychecks come in, we can't imagine how many TVs, grills, and luxury items that we've sold. She said, we cannot get them stocked fast enough. She said, we have more business than we've ever had on luxury items. And that's not what that should have been
Additional
for.
child credits, the payments going out for those.
They're huge.
Another issue that's come up with COVID, but it's or been exposed more by COVID, and it had to, you were talking about Walmart buying stuff. You know, I assume everybody here at the table, at least involved in a dealership or any other business, is also facing supply chain disruption.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
And I mean, you probably have equipment that you have customers have ordered that you have no clue when you're going to actually be able to take it.
Can't even order.
Well, can't order it, don't know when it's coming in, and maybe they ordered it last year, and you're now still hearing, well, we can't guarantee a delivery date. And then you have a customer back out of the order, and then the manufacturer doesn't want you to cancel it. I'm just, and when I say this, obviously, it's one thing that if it's a lawnmower. It's another thing if it's something important to our national defense, right? Or to our, don't get me wrong, I mean, everything's important. I don't want to, but we have these critical supply chain things that we need to have in order for our economy and our military and other things to work. And we outsourced it to China or wherever else, and now it's hurting our economy. It's going to, and these effects, I mean, what was the deal? Someone said to me, this was just in the last couple of days, but they said, well, we would have to run at 150% capacity for the next 2 years just to catch up to where we need to be. Just to catch up. And they're never going to get there. I mean, that's the, so anyway, I don't know what, again, I don't need more government spending, but I think it's important that the U.S. Senate, the House, the administration look at mandating that certain products a certain percentage of them have to be made in the United States that fill our military function.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had a bill during COVID. It was the Beat China Act, and
yes.
That's where we made sure that anything related to national security or our own best interests would be procured, resourced from the United States and not reliant upon China, because too much of what we utilize in the military, and as you see anywhere else across the spectrum of our economy, comes from China. And we continue to feed that machine, and we're not focusing on our own best interests here. So there are things that we need to source from the United States. There are certainly things that we can work with China. Certainly we can do that. But if it is involving intellectual property, if it's the types of materials that go into our computer chips and weaponry, it needs to be done here.
You mentioned that you voted against the infrastructure bill, and because you said it was like $250 billion short on pay-fors. But what else do you feel that could have been improved on that bill?
Well, certainly, I think the best thing would be to go back to the original bill. As I said, I helped author that original bill, worked on the Environment and Public Works Committee, where we did run water infrastructure through that committee. We ran surface transportation through that committee. And that original bill did have additional spending in it as well to bolster our roads and bridges. And I think going back to that basic bill that passed through the committees would have been the best way to pass an infrastructure bill. Unfortunately, it just got a lot of extra stuff that was put into it, things that, as you stated, came up $250 billion short. We can't pay for it. We shouldn't be promising things to our citizens when we can't pay for them.
Okay. All right. Well,